32 Santa Fe, one female shot in the chest.
The actor, Alec Baldwin, has been charged with involuntary manslaughter for the shooting on the set of a western that killed the film's cinematographer and wounded its director.
I was the one holding the gun, yeah.
Okay.
Alec Baldwin was born on April 3, 1958 in Amityville, New York. He grew up in Massapequa, a suburb on Long Island. Alec Baldwin's career started in 1980 when he was cast in daytime soap opera The Doctors, followed by a role in primetime soap Knots Landing.
The captain seems to think you're some sort of cowboy.
Over the years, Baldwin has shown his versatility as an actor in films. The district attorney for Santa Fe County, Mary Carmack, had said weeks earlier that Mr. Baldwin, as well as the movie's armorer, would face 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter for handling the gun and for failing to make sure the gun and ammunition were properly checked.
Read through everything and researched the case law and the law here in New Mexico. We realized that we believed that there was probable cause to charge Alec Baldwin and Halyna Gutierrez-Reed with involuntary manslaughter.
The gun was being used as a prop on the set of Rust, which was being filmed near Santa Fe in October 2001. When prosecutors said Mr. Baldwin pulled the trigger, firing a live round that struck the cinematographer, Halyna Hutchinson.
He didn't do any of the things that he was supposed to do to make sure that he was safe or that anyone around him was safe. And then he pointed the gun at Halyna Hutchinson and he pulled the trigger.
In a statement of probable cause, Robert Schilling, a special investigator for the district attorney's office, accused Mr. Baldwin of not receiving sufficient firearms training, failing to deal with the safety complaints on set, and of putting his finger on the trigger of a real firearm. In a statement of probable cause against the armorer, Hannah Reed, prosecutors faulted her for not checking the rounds she was loaded into the firearms, for allowing live rounds on scene, and for allowing ammunition to not be secured. They also accused her of failing to stay with the firearm, and she said she did not have enough experience or training.
Welcome to the worst day of my life. I can't believe Alec Baldwin was holding the gun. That's so
that this was a really fast and loose set, and that nobody was doing their job. There were 3 people that if they had done their job that day, this tragedy wouldn't have happened. And that's David Halls, Halyna Gutierrez-Reed, and Alec Baldwin.
In a statement after the announcement that charges were forthcoming, a lawyer for Mr. Baldwin, Luke Nickus, said, "This decision distorts Halyna Hutchinson's tragic death and represents a terrible miscarriage of justice. Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. He relied on the professionals who he worked with, who assured him that the gun had no live rounds." A lawyer for Ms. Hannah Reed, Jason Bowes, said the prosecutor's statements showed that they had completely misunderstood the facts and had reached the wrong conclusions. On 21st October 2001, Mr. Baldwin was rehearsing a scene that involved Cross drawing a revolver and pointing it towards the camera lens. The Bonanza Creek Ranch set was inside a structure depicting a 19th century wooden church. The gun discharged, and the bullet struck Ms. Hutchins in the chest and Ms. Souza in the shoulder.
You said only 4 of them had no primer caps and the other 2 did.
Yeah, and the other 2 did. Yeah, I pulled that other one out slightly and looked for the hole.
I mean, those holes are at the bottom though. You'd have to pull it out a pretty good ways.
Ms. Hutchins, age 42, was airlifted to a hospital in Albuquerque where she died. Ms. Souza, age 48, was taken by ambulance to a hospital in Santa Fe and was released the next day. Hours before the shooting, about 6 members of the camera crew walked off the set over working conditions, including complaints about long workdays and delayed paychecks. There were at least 2 accidental gun charges on the set of October 16th, days before the fatal shooting, according to 3 former members of the film's crew. Criminal charges were filed against Mr. Baldwin and Ms. Reed about 2 weeks after Santa Fe's County District Attorney announced it.
You say that both Halyna Gutierrez-Reed and Alec Baldwin have been charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter.
Mr. Baldwin will not be arrested, but rather issued a summons for an arraignment either in person or virtually. In New Mexico, as in many states, involuntary manslaughter is defined as killing another person unlawfully but unintentionally.
Unintentional means they didn't mean to do it. They didn't have the intent to kill. But it happened anyway, and it happened because of more than mere negligence, because of they didn't exercise due caution or circumspection.
If a jury found Mr. Baldwin or Ms. Reed guilty, it would choose between 2 manslaughter charges.
When this goes in front of a jury, the jury could find they're guilty on both, but since they're in the alternative, they will only be sentenced as to one count. The first part of the involuntary that we'll be charging is that they acted without due caution and circumspection, meaning they weren't just negligent in their duties, but that they were on notice, that they had duties, and that they should have done or not done something. The other is goes hand in hand with a misdemeanor, a petty misdemeanor here in New Mexico called negligent use of a deadly weapon. And that is that someone handled or used or touched a gun in a negligent manner.
The more serious one includes a firearm enhancement and a mandatory 5-year sentence, while the other charge carries a sentence to up to 18 months. Mr. Baldwin has repeatedly denied pulling the trigger and said that he believed the gun did not have a live ammunition in it.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
The trigger had to have been pulled in order for that gun to go off. The trigger was pulled.
In January 2022, Mr. Baldwin turned his phone into the police in Suffolk County, New York.
The cell phone actor Alec Baldwin used on the day of that fatal shooting on his movie set Rust is now in the hands of investigators. Baldwin's attorney says he handed over the phone today. Investigators believe it holds key conversations related to the shooting.
On April 20th, New Mexico state regulators released a report in which they faulted the producers of Rust and claimed that Ms. Hutchinson's death was caused by the film management disregard for the risks associated with handling guns on set.
They shouldn't have even been using a live gun that day. They should have been using a rubber or a plastic gun. All of these things go together and show that there was just this complacency, lack of care on that set.
The state also issued a $130,000 penalty on the production company. According to the affidavit, Detective Joel Canner of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office said that Dave Halls, an assistant director on the set, had gone outside and taken a gun off a court, where it had been placed by the film's armor, Miss Reed, and handed it to Mr. Baldwin during the rehearsal. The assistant director announced that it was a cold gun, indicating that it contained no live rounds and was safe to handle. According to an affidavit, Mr. Halls, who had previously been the subject of complaints about his regard for safety protocols on set, told an investigator that after the armor opened the gun for him to inspect, he did not check all of the rounds as he should have before handing it to Mr. Baldwin. It was not clear how the projectile that was fired ended up in the gun. Filmmakers described Ms. Hutchins as a skilled cinematographer with an artistic vision who was deeply committed to her work. She grew up on a Soviet military base in the Arctic Circle and studied economics in Ukraine before switching to a journalism program at Kyiv National University. On February 15th, her family filed a wrongful death lawsuit against crew members and producers, including Mr. Baldwin, accusing them of reckless conduct and cost-cutting measures that endangered the crew. As part of a settlement that was announced in October, Ms. Hutchins' husband will become an executive producer on the film.